Hi, in this short video I'm going to talk you through a weird little idea I had, which is all about a different way of showing people code. Showing people code in the context of teaching, of maybe a demo, maybe a stand-up, possibly even a big presentation in an auditorium to a whole bunch of people. And I'll just talk you through the windows I have on screen before I get started. Here is Chrome, nothing unusual about that, regular Chrome for Mac. It is showing a web page on Apache server, Apache via XAMPP. Nothing special about that, nothing unusual about it at all, except for a bit of 80s nostalgia in the port number that I chose. Over here in the second window, we have just got a text editor. This is a text editing application called Text Wrangler. It's now been discontinued, but it was a free, quite powerful text editor for Macs. It doesn't work with High Sierra, and they want us to buy BBEdit instead, apparently. But anyway, nothing special about that either, nothing unusual. There is just a text editor there so that you can see the code and it's coloring and formatting the code and so on. So, how am I going to give my presentation? The scenario here is that I'm giving you a presentation on how to do tables in Bootstrap 3. This is based on a presentation I once gave called Don't Fear the Front End, for back-end people who find HTML and CSS and JavaScript a bit difficult and annoying. I was just kind of saying Bootstrap is here, it's modular, you can get a ton of value out of Bootstrap without having to get too deeply into the code. Just by adding some nice classes, you can get all kinds of goodies out of Bootstrap. So here we are. How am I going to give my presentation? Here's my little remote. This will all become clear in a second. But this is a remote control through which I will take the steps in my presentation. So here we are. We've got a blank page. This is where we start. We're going to take the next step forward. Here I am. I've got a table. This is a table which I've kind of cheated by adding border equals 1 attribute to it just to make it look particularly ugly, so that you can see how nice it looks when you add a couple of Bootstrap classes to it. So here we are, Bootstrap 3, by the way. We're going to add just one class, the table class. Bootstrap has added all kinds of goodies just by adding this, table class equals table. So it's added some padding, it's added some alignment, it's added some subtle borders, it's got some good stuff there. It's handling the table header cells properly, slightly differently to the main table data cells. Anyway, we've added a class, it looks nicer. Stepping forward, we've added table striped. Not sure that's going to come out with QuickTime recording my screen. QuickTime doesn't seem to like the subtlety of the colors, but it doesn't matter. Trust me, they're striped. Here I am giving my presentation. I've added table condensed. Table condensed just tightens things up a bit less padding, just, get more information on screen. I tend to prefer that, just a personal thing. What else are we going to add? We're going to add table bordered, because by default, Bootstrap tables just have borders between rows. Now you've got all 4 sides of each cell has its own border. So columns and rows are all bordered. And table hover, again, this is a thing, it's a subtle little thing. When you move your mouse over it, the background color changes subtly to show the position of your mouse. It really doesn't matter. You can just assume that I've given you this presentation and you've seen it on screen, and what you've seen is that simply by adding these extra Bootstrap 3 classes, you've got a whole bunch of formatting without having to do any CSS or JavaScript or anything else of your own. So that's nice. So we'll go back to the start in case you're interested. We'll step through it again. We'll go forward. We'll add this. We'll add that. Wait, what was that? Imagine a student in class going, sorry, can you go back? Okay, I'll go back just to table class. Can I go forward? Yes, this is table stripe. This is table condensed. So I'm giving you this presentation. So that's all well and good, I hope. But what we need to do now is kind of step back. That was a hypothetical presentation I just gave you. How exactly did it work? What exactly am I doing? How am I giving this presentation? So, in case it wasn't entirely clear, what's going on now, this is not slides of the code. This is the actual code. When I click forward, the Bootstrap class class equals table is actually added to the source code. Text Strangler here, when an external process writes to the document that it's watching, it updates the document. Not all text editors do that, so that's why I chose Text Strangler. So when I step forward, I am actually changing the code, the source code of this page, and the source code changes. You can see it change in the text editor over there, and the source code changes in the browser. Just one thing that might not be immediately obvious is that when I'm changing something via the remote, I'm sending a refresh method back to the originating window from which the pop-up menu, pop-up remote window popped up. So pop-up windows are allowed to do that. So I am changing something in the code, and when I change something in the code, the pop-up window via JavaScript tells the originating window that it should now refresh, and Text Strangler over here on the left is refreshing itself, is updating itself. So how am I doing it? Let's step back from the hypothetical presentation I just gave to a bunch of fascinated people. What am I actually doing? How am I actually doing this? I'm stepping forward in code. So what this is actually doing, it's basically just a Perl script. It's a little bit of Perl magic wrapped around a Git repository, because this tutorial is in a Git repository, and the Git repository has a set of commits, and those commits are the different stages in my tutorial as we step backwards and forwards and say, this is the thing we're doing, this is the thing we're adding, this is the thing we're taking away. We've just got a little command in the background that knows all the stages of the Git repo, or the commits of the Git repo, and just checks out a particular one to order. I mean, we could elaborate on this remote. We could have a drop menu that showed each stage one by one, so I wouldn't have to go back to go 3. I could just go back to a particular thing. We could have one button for each stage of the tutorial. That's not important. The important thing is what we're doing is remotely telling Git to go back and check out different things. So if I just show you my other window here, this is what we're actually doing. We have git log here. The process here, in case it isn't obvious, is I'm doing watch git log. So every 1 second it does what's happening in git log. So when I do this, you'll see the git log changes. When I go back to the start, it goes back to the start. When I go to the end, it goes to the end. This is basically what I'm doing. The git log command tells you the stages, the commits of this project one by one, and I've just coded this remote so that I can pick up on a particular one and use it to go forward and backwards. So all you're really doing is saying, give me the git log, and the git log can be parsed, and you split it on line breaks, you split it on spaces, and you've got a bunch of stuff, a nice little array. And now you've got an array, you can just skip forwards and back and do whatever you like by saying check out this particular thing. So here's the command that I'm using behind the scenes, git log, one line, because otherwise it's just harder to split. No abbreviation, that gives you the full names of all the commits. All, I can't remember why I needed that. Date order reverse, obviously you want them in some kind of time order. Why would I want them in alphabetical order? Git, never mind. So that's all I'm doing. I'm doing this thing here, and it gives you this nice little list, and it shows you all your commits and their hashes, and you just say, right, to go back to number 2 or number 1, starting with 0. So there's all your commits, and you just can skip ahead and skip back, and you know what the first is, and you know what the last is, and you know the order they all came in. So that's all I'm doing. And as I say, I just thought it was an interesting, slightly different way of showing people the code, because once again, the code is the actual code. So you can imagine that if I were in a classroom and I was talking to people and they said, well, can you show us that again? Right, you go back to first and you say, right, just hit F5, just refresh. There's your empty page. Everybody got that? They can save as, they can inspect, they can view source. And I go, right, if everybody's followed that step, we will go to the second step. And then the code would change. If they hit F5 or refresh, whatever it is, they would see new code, and they could save as that, and they could inspect, and they could view source, and they could, talk to their friend who was next door, who was still on stage 1 when they were on 2, and compare the difference or whatever. So the actual code. And again, you could do it in a big auditorium with 1,000 people looking at my code. You could do it in a demo. You could do it in a stand-up. The idea is, as I say, I think I'm the person that kind of came up with this idea. I haven't seen anybody else do this or try to do this. You may think it's a crazy idea, but I think it's an unusual idea that kind of takes the idea of showing people code in a different direction, because normally you show people a video of yourself coding, you put slides on screen, maybe you put up the text in a presentation, but here I am actually showing you the code be coded, not typed bit by bit. Obviously I am showing you the code be coded live in the browser, in my browser, or in your browser if you want it that way. I guess for security it's not terrific, because what you've got is an external process writing into this folder on your web server, but it's only a demo, it's only a training course, it's not something important. You probably wouldn't want to have anything like this actually live on a real server for anything important, but I don't think it matters for training and demonstration purposes. It's just running off my hard disk after all. I have a question for anybody who's watched this, and that is, what should I call it? Because when I came up with this idea, I called it live code, but of course the words live code have actually been registered by some other organization, some other project related to HyperCard. And this, I don't have a name for it anymore. If I'm not going to call it live code, I could call it live code, actual code, real code, see the code. I would love it if somebody would comment with an interesting name for it. I would love you to like this video. I would like you to comment on this video and tell me what you think and ask me any questions. Thank you very much for watching.